You're not my responsibility anymore, Dad. You're just too much to handle. That's how it started. My name's William Carter. I'm 72 from Dallas, Texas. And that voice, that was my daughter, Amanda. The same girl I once carried on my shoulders through the state fair, laughing so hard cotton candy stuck to her cheeks. She was standing at the reception desk of the Willowbrook Senior Living Center, signing the last line on a stack of papers. Her tone was flat, all business. Everything's arranged. They'll take good care of you. The intake clerk, a young man who looked barely older than my grandson, avoided eye contact, pretending to check forms. I watched Amanda slide my medication list across the counter like she was dropping off dry cleaning. Her wedding ring flashed as she typed on her phone, probably confirming dinner plans. "You don't have to stay," I said quietly. "I know," she replied, already stepping back. "But it's what's best for everyone." I wanted to ask who everyone meant. Instead, I nodded. My voice had learned to hide pain over the years. The clerk cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, we just need your signature here for admission. There's a section for a family guarantor, but it's optional." Amanda didn't wait for me to read. "I'll sign for him." She reached for the pen, and for a second, our hands brushed, cold skin meeting familiar warmth. I saw the impatience in her eyes and decided not to fight. I signed my name and left the guarantor line blank, a small act of rebellion, maybe the last one I had left. She gave the clipboard back. "He'll need a private room. I'll cover the difference once his accounts are reorganized." I looked up at that word, reorganized, and something heavy settled in my chest. When she turned to leave, I asked, "Do you remember what your mother used to say about promises?" She hesitated, only for a second. "Mom said a lot of things, Dad, but we have to live in the real world." And then she was gone. The door closed behind her with that soft, final sound that feels louder than shouting. The clerk tried to smile. "Let's get you to your room, Mr. Carter." He handed me a plastic ID tag on a lanyard. I looped it over my neck, feeling smaller than I ever had in 72 years. The tag read, "Resident 04 Vempheim." No mention of the man who'd built 3 small businesses and paid every tuition bill that name ever touched. When he pushed the wheelchair toward the elevator, I caught a glimpse of my keyring dangling from my belt loop. A small silver USB drive hung beside my late wife's wedding ring. Faded engraving on it read, "WC Holdings." Amanda never asked what that was. She'd assumed it was just another relic of an old man's nostalgia. The elevator doors opened, and I let the quiet swallow me. Inside the room, the air smelled of lemon polish and distance. The nurse showed me where the call button was and smiled that careful professional smile. "If you need anything, press this." When she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the window. The city stretched beyond the glass. Dallas, still loud and alive. Somewhere out there, my daughter was probably driving home, telling herself she'd done the right thing. I reached for the keyring and turned the USB between my fingers. Its metal was warm, almost alive. It held something she didn't know, something she'd never thought to ask about. Maybe one day she would, maybe not. Either way, this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the first quiet chapter. "Sleep well, Mr. Carter?" the nurse asked the next morning, her tone kind but brisk. "I've had better nights," I said. Breakfast sat waiting on the tray. Scrambled eggs that tasted like cardboard and a cup of coffee so weak I could see the bottom. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have, like it wanted to remind me what time costs when you stop earning it. Her name tag read Maria. Mid-40s, steady hands, eyes that looked like they'd seen every kind of family drama. If you need anything, just press the call button. The Founders Suite Lounge opens at 9, though that's mostly for special donors. Founders Suite? I asked. She smiled faintly. Old benefactors, people who built this place. It's quiet there. I think you'd like it. When she left, I stared at the steaming plate again, but the only thing I could taste was memory. I remembered another breakfast years ago. Amanda was 16, running late for school, hair still wet, laughing as she spilled orange juice across the counter. Lena, my wife, laughed with her, shaking her head while wiping it up. Let her be, I said back then. She'll figure life out her way. Lena smiled at me. Just make sure you're there when she does. I was, always. Until now. Later that morning, Maria returned to walk me around the garden. Sunlight helps the mood, she said. Outside, the air carried that early Texas warmth that sits right between comfort and ache. Birds hopped across the hedges. The fountain gurgled softly. Nice place, I said. She nodded. You'd be surprised how many people forget what this place used to be. One of the owners designed the courtyard after his wife's garden. He passed years ago. I smiled, pretending not to know. That right? Yes. Mrs. Carter, I think. Lena Carter. You remind me of the man in the photo near the lobby. I swallowed hard. People say that sometimes. She kept talking, unaware of the storm behind my calm face. When we reached the far side of the courtyard, I noticed a small brass plaque by the roses, dedicated to Lena Carter, for her faith in quiet dignity. I stood there a long time. The sunlight made the letters glow. I could almost hear her voice, soft, patient, telling me not to lose myself in anger. Maria said, "We're lucky to have people like her in our history. Places like this don't happen by accident." No, I said quietly, they don't. After lunch, I unpacked my suitcase. Between folded shirts, I found a framed photo of Lena holding baby Amanda at White Rock Lake, wind in her hair, sun catching her eyes. I placed it on the table next to the bed. Beside it, I laid the USB drive. Small, ordinary, but heavier than it looked. That evening, Maria stopped by again. You settling in okay? I'm trying, I said. She smiled. That's all anyone can do. Before she left, she added, "Oh, and Mr. Carter, if you ever need peace and quiet, the Founders Suite is unlocked on weekends. You might find it familiar." I thanked her, though she didn't know how right she was. When she left, I sat in the growing dark, the hum of the air vent filling the silence. I looked at Lena's picture and whispered, "She put me here, honey. But I'm right where we built it." Then I picked up the USB and turned it over, its engraving catching the faint light. Amanda thought she'd buried me in comfort. She had no idea I was sitting in the middle of our life's work, and that little drive in my hand. It held the truth of it all. She zipped up her folder and stood. "You make everything so hard. I'll call you next week when the listing goes live." "Take care of yourself," I said, though she was already halfway out the door. When she was gone, the room felt twice as quiet. I looked down at the papers she'd left behind. The name stared back at me. Sunfield Operating LLC, bold at the bottom of every page. I reached for the small USB drive sitting beside Lena's photo, turned it once between my fingers, and plugged it into the old laptop the staff used for notes. The screen blinked to life. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing slow. Then the folders opened. Years of work, numbers and signatures that only two people ever understood. My name, Lena's handwriting, the trust documents she'd insisted we keep private. And there it was, the truth I'd almost forgotten how to face. The management company that owned this place, the one my daughter thought was just another firm, had always been mine. I leaned back, staring at the faint reflection of my face in the dark screen. Amanda had just tried to sell my house, never realizing she'd placed me inside another one I still owned. I waited until the hallway lights dimmed for the evening before stepping out. The place was quiet, almost too polite in its silence. Just the soft wheels of a meal cart in the distance and the hum of televisions behind closed doors. Something in me needed to move. Maybe it was restlessness. Maybe it was memory trying to find its footing again. I walked past the nurse's station, down the corridor Amanda had never bothered to explore. Every few feet, framed photographs lined the wall, smiling residents, ribbon cuttings, donation ceremonies. Names in brass plaques gleamed under the soft lights. Then I saw it. Near the end of the hallway, a large bronze plate read, W.C. and Partners Trust, 2005. I stopped breathing for a second. Lena and I had formed that trust 20 years ago when we opened this facility, our attempt to build something permanent, something kind. The initials weren't just letters. They were a promise. William Carter and Lena Carter, partners in everything, even after death. Beneath the plaque, a small inscription read, "For those who remember love, even when forgotten." I traced the letters with my fingers, my hand trembling slightly. So this was where the truth had been hiding, in plain sight, on a wall everyone passed, but no one saw. A voice startled me. "Mr. Carter, you shouldn't be out here this late." It was Maria, holding a flashlight, her shoes squeaking softly on the polished floor. "I couldn't sleep," I said. "I was just remembering." She followed my gaze to the plaque. "Ah, that's part of our donor wall. Most of these families still have ties here. That one," she nodded toward mine, "belonged to a local developer and his wife. They did a lot of good before they passed." I smiled faintly. "Is that what the records say?" "That's what I've heard," she said, puzzled. "Why?" "Just wondering how accurate stories stay when the storytellers aren't around." She tilted her head. "You knew them?" I hesitated. "You could say that." She studied me for a second longer, then her voice softened. "Well, you're welcome to visit the records office if you ever want to know more. Mr. Kemp, the facility lawyer, keeps most of the old files there. He's in twice a week." "Mr. Kemp," I repeated quietly, tasting the name like an echo. "I remember him." "You do?" "Yes. He helped someone I used to know." Maria smiled kindly. "He'll be here Thursday morning." "Thank you," I said, my voice steady but my chest full of old fire. After she left, I stayed a while longer. The plaque gleamed faintly in the dim light. My reflection merged with Lena's engraved name, our letters side by side like we were still standing together. For the first time since Amanda dropped me here, I didn't feel lost. I felt like I was walking back into a story I'd written long ago, one my daughter didn't even know existed. I turned the brass key in my pocket, its edges warm against my skin, and whispered to the empty hallway, "Still here, Lena. Still holding the line." Then I made my way back to my room, ready for the morning and for Mr. Kemp. The next morning came slow, heavy with that kind of quiet you can feel behind your ribs. Maria helped me down to the lounge after breakfast, but my mind was elsewhere, already in that small conference room she'd mentioned. By 10 o'clock, I was sitting across from David Kemp, the same man who had drawn up my trust years ago. His hair was thinner now, his suit a little looser, but his voice still carried that calm precision I remembered. "Well, Mr. Carter," he said, opening a folder, "I can't tell you how good it is to see you again, though I wish it were under different circumstances." I smiled faintly. "I'm not complaining. I'm just here to confirm a few things." He adjusted his glasses. "Maria said you had questions about Sunfield operating?" I nodded. "My daughter seems to think they own this place." He chuckled quietly, shaking his head. "No, sir. Sunfield operates under lease from the W.C. and Partners Trust. You and Mrs. Carter never sold the property, only delegated management. The trust still holds majority ownership. It's been that way since 2005. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "So, technically, you're the landlord," he said, smiling, "and still the majority trustee. No one can remove you without your written consent, not even family." For a moment, I just stared at the papers he laid out, financial reports, signatures, the same documents Lena and I had signed together all those years ago. Her handwriting curved softly beside mine, strong and graceful, even in ink. David slid over another sheet, yellowed slightly with time. "Your wife left you this letter. Said I was to give it to you if you ever returned here as a resident." I hesitated before opening it. The paper smelled faintly of old cedar and perfume, her perfume. "If you're reading this, Will, it means life has taken one of its hard turns. Don't meet it with pride, meet it with patience. You built this home to protect others. Maybe one day it'll protect you. And if someone you love forgets what love means, remember, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means staying kind when no one expects you to be." I folded the letter carefully, pressing my palm against her name like a silent vow. "She was a wise woman," David said softly. "She still is," I murmured, "even from where she is now." Before I left, David pointed to the calendar pinned on the wall. "We've got the quarterly board review this Friday. I think it's time you attend it again. Remind them who's really at the table." "Friday," I said, repeating it. "That'll do." He gathered the files into a neat stack. "You want me to contact your daughter about any of this?" "No," I said gently. "Not yet. She'll find out when she's ready to listen, not when she's ready to profit." David gave a small smile. "Still the same man I met 20 years ago." "Just older," I replied, "and maybe a little quieter." He stood and shook my hand. "Welcome home, Mr. Carter." When I walked back through the garden, the wind carried a faint warmth, brushing across the roses Lena had planted. Amanda had no idea. No idea that this place, this building she'd used to hide me away, was the same one her mother and I built from nothing. She thought she'd tucked me into a corner of life. But all she'd really done was put me back inside the heart of my own work. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt ready. Friday wasn't far. Amanda showed up Friday morning before the board meeting, right on cue. Her heels clicked down the hallway like they owned the floor. She didn't even say hello, just crossed her arms in the doorway and said, "Dad, we need to talk before you embarrass yourself." I stayed seated by the window. That's an interesting way to start a conversation. She stepped closer. "Don't play coy. I heard from someone named Kemp. You've been asking questions, digging through files that have nothing to do with you." "They have everything to do with me," I said calmly. "You just never asked." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not well enough to make these decisions. If you do something reckless, you could lose everything." I looked at her and smiled gently. Amanda, you already took everything you thought mattered. That stopped her for half a second. Then she found her tone again. You don't understand how complicated finances are these days. I'm just trying to protect you. By selling my house? By cutting my cards? I asked. Tell me, does protecting someone always start with taking their choices away? She sighed, shifting her weight. I'm trying to keep things from falling apart. You should be thanking me. Thanking you, I repeated, letting the words breathe. For what? Deciding where I should live? Who I should be? What's next? You'll choose what I remember too? She folded her arms tighter. You're being dramatic. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just remember a time when family meant listening, not managing. For a long moment, she didn't speak. I could see the struggle in her face, the way guilt tried to push through pride, but couldn't quite find the door. Finally, she muttered, The board meeting starts soon. Just don't do anything stupid. I nodded. I won't. But I can't promise you'll like what smart looks like. Her gaze flickered toward the envelope on my desk, the one marked for the board. What's that? Something your mother helped me write, I said. Years ago. Her brow furrowed. Mom's been gone a long time. Not as long as you think, I said softly. Some people stay alive in the places they built. She stared at me, half confused, half unsettled. You're hiding something. Maybe, I said, standing slowly. But I'm not the one who should be afraid of what's found. She turned away, frustrated. You're impossible. I smiled faintly. That's what your mother used to say, right before she kissed my forehead and called me wise. Her jaw tightened. This conversation isn't over. I know, I said. That's why I'm going to that meeting. She hesitated at the door, as if she wanted to ask what I meant. But pride won again, and she walked out. The silence that followed was steady, not lonely. I reached for the letter Lena had written all those years ago and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I wasn't going to expose Amanda. I wasn't going to shame her. But for once, she'd see the truth for herself, and maybe remember the man she used to call her hero. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain had started again, tapping softly on the window, like it wanted to remind me the world was still moving. I turned on the lamp and took out 2 envelopes from my drawer, one for Amanda, one for the board. Both felt heavier than paper had any right to feel. I laid them on the table beside Lena's photograph and opened my old notebook. The pages were yellowed, the handwriting uneven from years of shaking hands. But I began to write anyway. Amanda, you won't understand this tonight, but one day you might. I know you think you're helping me, but help without kindness is just control wearing good clothes. I'm not angry. Anger is too small for what I feel. What hurts is how little you see of what's left of me. I paused, looking at her mother's picture. The lamplight caught the silver frame and turned it gold. Your mother and I built this place so people like us could age with grace, not guilt. She believed that when love is real, it never needs to humiliate anyone to prove it. That's why I won't expose you, even though I could. I just hope that one day you'll remember who taught you to hold doors open for others, not close them behind you. I stopped writing when my eyes blurred. The rain outside grew steadier, washing the world clean in a rhythm that sounded almost forgiving. I sealed the letter and slipped it into the envelope with her name on it. Then I took out the second one, the one for the board, and inserted the new trust clause I'd written earlier that evening. It outlined a scholarship fund in Lena's name for caregivers who treated their residents like family. No one would know it came from me. They'd just call it the Dignity Fund. I wanted the place to remember kindness, even if my daughter didn't. When I finished, I set both envelopes on the desk. The one for Amanda was thin and light, like a hope I refused to crush. The one for the board was thick with signatures and change. Then I turned on my old voice recorder, the same one I used to capture business notes years ago. My voice came out slower than I remembered, but steady. This is William Carter. If anyone ever listens to this, it means my story has come full circle. I've been many things: a husband, a father, a builder, a fool. But tonight, I'm just a man trying to keep love from turning bitter. I switched it off, placed it gently beside Lena's photo, and looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The streets glistened like new mirrors. Tomorrow, the board would meet. Amanda might show up, might not. Either way, something would shift, not because I forced it, but because truth has its own quiet way of standing up when it's time. I pressed my fingers against the sealed letters and whispered, "This is for you, Lena." For both of them. Then I turned out the light. The room settled into silence, the kind that doesn't ache anymore, just waits. The next morning broke with a pale sun over Dallas, bright but quiet, as if the sky itself didn't want to interrupt what came next. I dressed slowly. Navy sweater, pressed shirt, Lena's wedding ring still tied to my keychain, and walked down the long corridor toward the boardroom. The meeting had already started. Through the glass door, I could see Amanda sitting near the end of the table, her posture tense, phone face down beside a notebook she wasn't writing in. When I entered, the room went still. Ellen, the board chair, stood politely. "Mr. Carter, good to see you. Would you like to join us?" "I would," I said, taking the open seat at the head of the table, the same chair I'd once chosen for Lena when this place was new. The discussion went on. Budgets, staff turnover, facility upgrades. I listened quietly, my hand resting on the envelope before me. No one here knew I'd written half of the bylaws they were quoting. When the agenda reached trust oversight, Ellen cleared her throat. "We've had inquiries from the Carter family representative about future control of the property. We thought perhaps you could offer guidance, Mr. Carter." I looked across the table at Amanda. Her eyes flicked toward mine, a mixture of confusion and dawning fear. I spoke evenly. "My only guidance is this. This foundation was never built for control. It was built for care. As long as I'm alive, that will stay true." Ellen nodded. Then it settled. The gavel hit the table softly. Amanda didn't speak. She just sat there, pale, eyes glossy, realizing she'd misread the entire story she thought she was writing. When the meeting ended, she followed me out to the courtyard. The wind moved through the rose bushes, the ones Lena planted years ago. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "why didn't you tell me?" "Because you weren't ready to hear it," I answered. "Some truths only land when the noise inside you quiets down." "I thought you needed help." "I did," I said, "but not the kind that takes my name off my own life." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said softly. "That's why it hurts." For a moment, she reached for my hand, then stopped halfway, unsure if she still had the right. I didn't move. Just let the silence do what words couldn't. Finally, she whispered, "What happens now?" I looked out across the courtyard. The fountain shimmered in the sunlight, and somewhere in the distance, a cardinal landed on the railing. "What happens now?" I repeated quietly. That depends on what kind of daughter you want to be, and what kind of father I'm still allowed to be. She turned away, wiping her eyes before walking toward the parking lot, her heels tapping slower this time. I stayed there a long while, the envelope for her still tucked in my jacket pocket. Then I turned to the quiet camera in my mind. The people listening, the ones who'd been with me since that first moment she said I was a burden. I gave my daughter everything, I said softly. My work, my house, my name, my heart. You heard what she did, and you've seen what I still feel for her. Tell me, what should I do now? Should I forgive her and start over? Should I keep my distance and let her learn? Or should I finally show her what she really gave away? Because no matter what she's done, I still love her.